My name is Ulises, and I have been working as an Uber driver in Mexico City for a few years. In my job, I am used to seeing strange things, people fighting, drunks, and shameless individuals who have literally offered me drugs from the back seat. I've seen it all. But this experience, unlike the others, was not about weird people, but something more disconcerting. One Saturday night around 2 in the morning, I accepted a ride just a block away. I was near the Roma neighborhood, where several bars are located. It is a good place to work, at the risk of a customer vomiting in the back of my car. I approached the corner where the passenger was waiting. In theory, it was a girl traveling alone, so I was surprised to see 2 women standing there. One looked quite young, about 20 years old, and was very drunk, staggering next to a lamppost. As I got closer, I was scared she would fall face first into the street. The woman with her appeared more serious and mature, in her 40s, dressed conservatively and seemingly sober. She was not swaying, barely moving, and only stared at her companion without helping her. I stopped and asked the younger girl if she was Milani. She said yes, leaning against the window to stay upright, and showed me her phone. A second later, she stumbled into the back seat. Here's the first strange thing. I did not notice when the other woman entered. I never heard the door open or close, but she was there, in the seat behind me, completely silent. I thought about it briefly, but assumed I had been distracted. As they settled, I glanced in the rearview mirror. Despite the age difference, I noticed a strong resemblance in their nose and hair. They had to be related. The older woman seemed serious and annoyed, as if she had come to collect the girl and was upset to find her in that state. It was not my place to judge. I started the journey. The app already had the destination because the younger girl fell asleep immediately. The other passenger was quiet and never made eye contact, just stared at the girl. I asked if she knew her, and in a curt voice, she said she was her mother. After that, she gave no other answers. The atmosphere inside the car grew heavy and cold, which I attributed to the air conditioning. I said I would turn it off, but received no response. The rest of the trip was silent and awkward. Milani muttered 4 or 5 times that she felt sick. I offered to stop or let her vomit out the window, but she was unconscious. I asked her mother to help her sit up, but she ignored me. Now that I think of it, the older woman never touched the girl during the entire trip. Fortunately, Milani held it in, and we neared our destination in an expensive residential area. I was taking curves slowly to avoid disturbing her when a dry, apathetic voice from behind me said, "You are a good boy. Take care of her, please." My eyes were on the road, and I replied that she should not worry and we would arrive soon, though I did not know why I said that. After rounding a curve, I looked in the rearview mirror to smile at her. But the woman was gone. My first thought was that she had jumped out. I checked the side mirrors and slowed down to look back, but I saw nothing. I never heard the door open or close. Though I tried to be logical, my hands began to tremble. I took a deep breath, calmed myself, and continued. At the address, a tall building in a complex, I tried to wake Milani. Her eyes were closed and she only babbled incoherently. She could not operate her phone or stand. I told her to unlock her phone so I could call her mother or someone to help. She babbled about her mother before bursting into tears. This made me nervous, but I stayed calm. After a struggle, she instinctively called her father and tossed me the phone. A man with a deep, serious voice answered. I explained that his daughter was downstairs, unable to move. He was downstairs in minutes, quite worried. We spoke briefly about what happened, and I mentioned the other passenger. I saw doubt and deep concern in his eyes. He knew exactly who I described, but offered no explanation. He simply helped his daughter from the seat and asked if everything was paid. I said yes, but he still gave me a small cash tip. I did not dare press him about the woman. It was not my place to ask for explanations. But looking back, I have a strong feeling that the girl's mother, even after death, continues to watch over her. Hello, my name is Angeles, and I am from Cuernavaca, Mexico, though this happened in Tijuana. This story occurred 2 years ago, in December. After much reflection, I believe the emotional state I was in had everything to do with what happened. It was a difficult time. My family was far away. I had moved in with my boyfriend over a year before, and we had just broken up. Our relationship had become toxic. I was socially isolated, laid off from my job due to staff reductions, and drowning in debt. All I had was my car, which was not in good condition. My best option was to work as an Uber driver. I had been working for a month. Things were slightly better financially, but emotionally, I was a mess, filled with negative and self-destructive thoughts. I remember it was December 22nd. I was depressed about not spending Christmas with my parents. That night, I was driving on a highway on the outskirts of the city when a loud explosion outside the car signaled a flat tire on the driver's side rear wheel. It was the worst possible place, given how lonely the road was. I canceled the trip and pulled over to change the tire. I know how to do it, but at 5'3" and 110 pounds, it is not easy. I got the jack, the lug wrench, and the spare tire and began. My state of mind was terrible. The road was lonely, surrounded by vegetation, with no cars and no houses. It was very cold. Then I heard murmurs behind me. I stood up, clutching the lug wrench, ready to defend myself. On the other side of the road, a little girl was looking at me. I calmed down as I observed her. Her face was dirty, her hair disheveled, and her clothes were old. I waved, but she did not respond. She just stared. My arms went numb. I asked where her parents were or if she needed help, but she remained still as a statue. I grew nervous, thinking she might be bait for a robbery. I called out to her again loudly, but she did not answer. We stared at each other for a few seconds until I heard a car approaching at full speed from the opposite direction. It passed in a fraction of a second, blocking my view of the girl. In that instant, she vanished. I gasped and hurried to finish changing the tire, knowing this was not natural. I called my parents on speakerphone to distract myself. As if realizing the girl was a ghost had opened a door, I began to hear more whispers behind me, subtle but clear. I pretended to be calm with my parents, lying that I was on a busy street. I changed the tire faster than ever, feeling watched, forcing myself not to look left. I put the flat tire and tools in the trunk, got into the car, started it, and accelerated. I tried not to look in the rearview mirror, but curiosity won. I looked back and saw her again, this time perched on the road barrier, watching me drive away. That is one of the strangest things I have ever seen. I have since become a more spiritual person. During that time, my life was filled with unease, sadness, and frustration. My grandmother once told me that with such events, the energy you have is important as you can unintentionally attract them. I believe that is the key. My mind was racing, and it probably attracted an entity that accompanied me at that road for about 5 minutes. Hi, my name is Naira. I am 25 and from Mexico City. This story happened very recently. I have no proof it was paranormal, but my heart tells me I witnessed something strange. I was at my boyfriend's house around 1 a.m. After an argument, I decided to leave and wait for an Uber outside rather than stay. I was near the Panteon station, but the subway was not running. I stood under a lamppost, phone in hand, waiting for my Uber or for my boyfriend to apologize. Neither happened. My anger turned to fear as I realized how dark and deserted the street was. I regretted my recklessness, fearing crime more than ghosts. The street was empty and silent, so I was surprised when a car appeared from a corner and approached without a sound. The app said my car was a white sedan. I tried to read the license plate, but it was missing from the front. I did not hear an engine, but I heard white noise from inside the car, like a radio tuned to static, with a distant voice occasionally breaking through. The car parked, and after a few seconds, the driver rolled down the window. He was an old man in his 70s with gray eyes and white hair. He gave me a cold look and in a subdued voice told me it was my taxi. I did not get in. He had called it a taxi, which Uber drivers do not do. I asked if he was Javier, but he did not answer. He stared ahead without moving or blinking. I walked to the back of the car and checked the license plate. It was old, rusty, and different from the one in the app. I was terrified, thinking it was a kidnapper. I moved away, looking for an escape route. I was far from my boyfriend's building and did not have my key. I played it cool, asking if he had changed the license plate or if it was a borrowed car. He remained a statue. I started backing away. The static was unbearable. In a moment of adrenaline, I ran toward my boyfriend's building. As soon as I turned my back, a sudden silence fell. I turned around, and the car and the old man were gone. I had only turned for a second. There was no way the car could have started and disappeared around the corner that quickly. I froze, looking in every direction. Then, from another street, a much newer white car arrived. It was my real Uber. I got in trembling and asked the driver, Javier, if he had seen an old man in a white sedan. He said no and asked if we should call the police. I decided it was not necessary. Over time, I have reflected on the details. His behavior, the silence of the car, the speed of his disappearance, and the strange feeling he left me with have convinced me that the car and its driver were no longer of this world. My name is Luis Carlos, and I'm from Monterrey. I have been working as an Uber driver for a while, and I recently had an experience that was both sad and terrifying. It was a Friday night, a good time to work because of the people going out to clubs. I was parked near an area with many bars when, around 1 a.m., I accepted a ride. The passengers were a girl and her boyfriend. They were young, sober, and friendly. We chatted about the city, and eventually about ghosts and supernatural topics. The address was on the other side of town, so we had time to talk. I was paying close attention to the road because of reckless drivers. I was surprised to see a car pass us on the right. For a split second, I saw the driver through the window, a young man with white skin and brown hair. We were going fast, but he was going over 110 miles per hour. I grew worried when I saw him swerve slightly. The young man in my back seat commented that there were too many reckless people on the road who do not think of the consequences until it is too late. He had no idea how true his words were. Only seconds later, we heard the screech of tires and a loud collision ahead. I slowed down. As we approached, we saw the car that had passed us, now a mangled wreck against a concrete barrier. A horrible feeling of emptiness and unease washed over me. The girl in the back called the police. I saw the driver's body on the asphalt. He must have been thrown through the windshield. Next to his body, I saw a shadow standing. We all gasped. I realized the shadow was the young driver we had seen. Despite the smoke, I saw his face clearly. I saw confusion in his eyes, as if he could not believe what had happened, and sadness and regret as he clenched his fists. A few seconds later, the shadow vanished like a mirage. All three of us saw it. The girl begged me to drive past. I was unsure, but we continued. The rest of the trip was silent, and I dropped them off without further incident. On my way back, authorities were at the scene. The body was covered with a white sheet. I saw the young man again, no longer by his body but by his car, walking aimlessly, dazed, as if he had not processed his death. I felt deep pity for him. His immaturity was obvious. He could not have had his license long. One reckless mistake was enough to take his life. When I told my wife, she suggested it might have been a bystander, but that does not explain how he vanished the first time. To this day, I'm convinced we saw the spirit of that boy who had just died. The moral of this story is to always be prudent with your decisions, both behind the wheel and in life, because you never know when a bad decision can take your life. My name is Augusto, and I live in Yucatan. I recently started driving for Uber. My father, a taxi driver for many years, warned me I would meet strange people, but I never imagined something so disconcerting would happen so soon. I work near Merida International Airport, a good place to pick up tourists. In my first week, around 8 o'clock, I got a ride request to a distant hotel. I arrived to find a woman in her 30s with several suitcases. She was pretty but had a faraway look, taking a long time to react. I honked and called out the window. I asked if she was Gabriella, and she nodded. I helped her with her luggage. She had a lot, and I imprudently asked if she was traveling alone. She innocently replied that she was, staying in Merida for a while. I continued conversationally, telling her she would enjoy the city and its tourist attractions. She smiled and asked what places I would recommend. At that moment, I heard a slight thump from the trunk but thought nothing of it. We talked about interesting places, and I recommended the beach. She said that was part of the plan. Feeling more comfortable, I asked if she was there for vacation, work, or another reason. A louder bang from the trunk made me check the rearview mirror, but I saw nothing. Gabriella seemed not to hear and replied she was there for a family matter but planned to enjoy her trip. I fell silent, waiting for another knock. When it did not come, I continued talking. She asked how long I had been an Uber driver. The conversation was friendly, and I felt a hint of flirting. Suddenly, another bang came from inside the trunk. This time, Gabriella had heard it. She could not pretend otherwise. A silence fell between us. I said the bangs were strange. She nodded, growing nervous, which made me nervous too. I asked if she had anything in her suitcases that could make the sounds. When she did not answer, I grew distrustful. My imagination ran wild. Could she be hiding someone? A child? I considered calling the police, getting out, or opening the trunk. It was not necessary. Gabriella sighed and explained she had married a much older man in her 20s and was widowed by COVID. Her husband had loved to travel, so this was their last trip before she scattered his ashes at sea. Judging by the knocking, he did not seem to like the idea. I asked if this was normal. She did not answer immediately, but after a moment she said he had always been extremely jealous. Every time she felt comfortable with another man, he would have fits of rage. As she confessed this, a loud bang made me grip the steering wheel. I glanced at her and changed the subject, saying we were almost there. She saw this as a chance to vent and, through tears, explained the nightmare her life had become since marrying him. She regretted marrying a controlling, possessive man 30 years her senior. She felt relief at his death, but also felt she deserved her punishment. Since becoming a widow, her life was a living hell. She was well off, but could not see friends or meet anyone without the house becoming haunted. Furniture moved, sounds in the night. Her husband's spirit was driving her mad, and she believed his ashes were the key. She hoped scattering them would appease him. I remained silent, listening, ignoring the bangs. We arrived at the hotel. She apologized as staff helped with her luggage and gave me a generous tip. I watched her enter, feeling very sorry for her. My experience was strange and terrifying, but it was nothing compared to what she endured. I was terrified a jealous spirit would haunt me, but fortunately, it did not. I can only hope Gabriella's plan worked and her husband found peace. Good evening. My name is Stephanie from Buenos Aires. This happened about 7 years ago and is my favorite scary story. One night, my best friend Bianca and I were downtown and ran out of money. We could not afford an Uber, so we used a cheaper ride-sharing app. The drawback is that it drops each passenger at their stop, like a bus. We had no other way home, so we requested a ride. The vehicle was a green van with 3 rows of seats. Inside were the driver, a passenger who said goodnight, a young man asleep in the 3rd row reeking of alcohol, and an elderly woman at the back who gave us a toothless smile and stared as we got in. We took seats in the middle row. Immediately, we noticed 2 things. First, the driver and passenger had their windows closed, despite a terrible smell of decay inside, sour and like rotten eggs. Bianca and I looked at each other in disgust. No one else seemed to notice. I felt nauseous and asked the driver about the smell. He glanced in the mirror and said he smelled nothing. The passenger said the same. The old woman just smiled. I was not going to argue. I suggested to Bianca we get off, but she told me to ignore it. I tried, but the vehicle was eerie. We were going to her house. She had no more money, so we had no other options. The old woman began to hum a song. Bianca and I tried to chat, but the smell grew stronger. After 20 minutes, we reached the passenger's stop and he got out. The driver said he would drop off the sleeping boy next and then us. I bit my tongue, not asking about the humming woman, assuming she was with the boy. We drove another 10 minutes in silence, broken only by the humming, until we arrived at the boy's stop. Bianca turned to wake him, and he got out, swaying. I finally asked where he was dropping the woman off. As I spoke, I realized the humming had stopped. The smell of decay had also faded. The driver turned, confused, and asked which woman I meant. Bianca and I turned around. The back seat was empty. I blurted that maybe she left with the boy. Bianca shook her head, saying the woman was still there when she woke the boy and she never saw her get out. We speculated until the driver, rudely but understandably, asked if we were drunk. Annoyed, I said no. He insisted there had never been a woman in his van. The rest of the trip was silent and uncomfortable. I kept glancing over my shoulder, expecting the woman to reappear. At Bianca's house, we confirmed to each other we had both seen her. Thanks to that, we knew we were not crazy, but that was all we got from the experience. We have no idea who or what that woman was. A ghost haunting the van? The ghost of the boy's grandmother? It is difficult to determine. I've seen many strange things, but This is the only one for which I have found no explanation. Hello, my name is Matthias. This story is not about me, but my father, Felipe, who witnessed a particular paranormal event. He has repeated this story many times and gave me permission to share it. After a lifetime as a taxi driver, my father started working as an Uber driver in Morelia, Michoacan. He often worked late for extra money. One night in mid-2022, he was in the Las Americas area and accepted a nearby ride. He saw the customer from a distance, a middle-aged man who was very agitated. He was pacing nervously, looking over his shoulder. My father thought he was being followed or it was a robbery setup. He approached slowly, doors unlocked, and asked if he was Carlos. The man, on the verge of tears, said yes and begged to be let in. My father asked if he was all right. Carlos said yes, fastening his seatbelt, and claimed he was nervous from a fight with his girlfriend. They began the journey. As they drove, my father saw Carlos was still agitated, constantly checking the rear view and side mirrors, then saying a Hail Mary or an Our Father. This strange behavior tried my father's patience. He suddenly asked who was following him. The man seemed stunned, then, after hesitating, explained that death was following him. My father, a skeptic, thought of criminals, not the supernatural. He patiently said that in that case, he would have to let him out and cancel the trip. Carlos, almost in tears, begged him not to, and explained he did not mean criminals, but real death. My father thought Carlos was crazy, but would not kick him out. He played along and asked for details. Carlos, without taking his eyes from the mirror, explained he had been having nightmares for months. In each one, a gaunt woman dressed in black with white flowers in her hands appeared, and each ended with his imminent death in various ways. He tried to ignore them, but they wore him down. He suffered insomnia, yet when he had the nightmares, he struggled to wake up. When he started seeing the woman out of the corner of his eye in crowds, he knew something real was stalking him. My father suggested it was stress and he should see a psychologist. Carlos disagreed, gripped by panic, and said it was catching up to him, getting closer. My father was driving on a quiet avenue. He stopped at a red light and tried to calm Carlos, saying death comes without warning. This seemed to help, but suddenly, Carlos stared ahead, terrified. He screamed terribly, struggling to open the door. He unlocked it, ran into the intersection, and was instantly killed by a car going at full speed. My father was breathless, staring, unable to comprehend what happened. With trembling hands, he called to report the accident. The other driver was distraught. My father felt the world go silent, only a ringing in his ears. He stared ahead, wondering what Carlos had seen, feeling guilty, thinking he was a psychiatric patient he had led to his death. The operator answered. As he settled into his seat, he glanced in the rearview mirror and froze. A gaunt woman dressed in black was sitting in the back where Carlos had been. His breath caught. He listened to the operator greet him repeatedly, saying nothing. In the blink of an eye, the woman vanished. My father is absolutely certain the thing in his car was what had been harassing Carlos, leading to his death. He finished the call and stepped away from his car. The authorities were in contact for weeks, but he learned nothing more. Many have called it a psychotic episode or mad hysteria that Carlos's story influenced him. But my father, the world's biggest skeptic, knows what he saw was real. He cannot be sure it was death itself, but he is convinced his passenger was followed by an entity, and that night, it caught him. And so, we arrive at the end of our haunted route, from the jealous dead in a suitcase to the specter of death itself in the rearview mirror. These streets are paved with more than just asphalt. They are layered with memory, regret, and echoes of those who are not ready to leave. Remember, the next time you hail a ride, you are not just a passenger. You are a guest. A guest in a metal shell hurtling through the night, and you never know who or what might be sharing it with you. If these stories send a chill down your spine, share your own spectral encounters in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell.